welcome to the fun and mentals of real estate. I'm your host here today, Angela Dillmon at Keller Realty, Chesterfield. And this is my wealth building partner,
Glen Calvin, Gill Mortgage. What are we here to do today?
We are here to help you live your dream lifestyle,
build wealth,
and leave legacies that
yes,
matter. Okay, question of the day.
What determines the value of anything?
Of anything.
Yeah.
What determines the value of anything? Whether it's your car, or
yes.
whether it's you're
These
trying to
flowers,
sell that old
right.
couch, or
yeah.
Right? What determines the value of anything?
Yeah.
So, what do you think?
I know the answer.
You know the answer? Okay, we'll talk about it in a minute. Because
right.
Today we're going to talk about the appraisal process.
The wedding
right?
venue.
Right. Oh my gosh! Here we are. We're
wedding
planning
analogy.
this wedding.
Yes.
And Glen's your best man. Okay, I'm just saying. I'm your maid of honor.
Yes.
All right. You've got your bridal party,
yes.
and that's your title company, your inspector, right?
Right.
Your contract to close person that we have gifted to you during this process on our team, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a whole team of people, and that's what it takes, because it takes that to plan a wedding, right? You might have the wedding planner and all the things. So I know you're a little nervous, you're a little stressed. We talked about that last week.
It is stressful,
one of the
right?
top 5 stressors in life, and this is why you need really competent people. So you might meet somebody and they might be really nice and a good character, but they might not be quite competent enough to really deal with all these snags. So this last week talked about loan snags. This is kind of a loan snag too, because it is with
it's
the
important,
loan, right?
Yeah.
But it's an appraisal snag. So
we're just talking about the appraisal in general.
Yeah. What kind of snags can happen with an appraisal? And so first of all, let's just start with what is an appraisal and why the heck do I need one, Glenn?
Right. So the appraisal is a qualified person's opinion of what the value of the house is, and why we need it is. It's one of the 3 most important things that we're basing your loan on. So we're basing your loan on I really have my little triangle. We're basing it on how you use credit and your history of credit, and that's going to be your credit score.
Okay.
We're going to look, the other one is going to be your debt to income ratios.
Ooh, that's the base.
Your house payment,
right.
your house payment, all your other loans as a percentage of what you earn.
Right.
And the third is the appraisal of the property that we're loaning to you, and we're using that property as collateral for your loan.
Right. So in case, heaven forbid, you don't make a payment,
right.
the lender's like, well, I'm not going to just count on the fact you're going to pay me,
right?
I have
this is our collateral.
This asset that I can take back and resell if I need to, right?
Right.
And so there you go. This is why you need it. It's collateral. They're going to determine the value.
And there's a term called
what else
there's a term called conforming loans. It means this loan conforms to a certain standard. And not to get too big picture, but the mortgage bonds are traded and sold in billions of dollars, and people buy these bonds. It's a safe investment, but they know when they buy that bond that the appraisal was done by a qualified appraiser, that the lender has reviewed that appraiser, and that their collateral that they're loaning the money for is
worth it.
Yes.
It's worth what you're trying to buy the property for. So let's just acknowledge right up front here. I mean, an appraisal is really an art.
It is. It's art. It's an opinion.
Science. It's not just a mathematical equation.
No, it's not at all.
They don't just open a book and say, okay, I can give this much value because you have this much more square foot than the next guy, right?
Right.
There are books that do have the value that they follow those things, but there's
those are
a
great
little
guidelines.
bit of an art
Heck
to
yeah,
this.
there is, right?
There's
and
definitely an art to
we
it.
talked, and I'm so glad we started with that question, because the appraiser is going to say that if I'm buying the house from Angie, that Glenn and Angie agreed on this value, he's going to try the best as he can to support that value.
Yeah, I mean, he's not trying to knock it, but at the same time, okay, I got a question for you then. Does he know what I'm trying to buy the house for?
Of course, 100%. Not only does he know what you're buying the house for, he also knows if there's any seller concessions. If the seller's paying the closing costs. Right. He knows all of that.
Leaving a fridge and a washer and dryer, and then that's why we state in the contracts that they have no value.
Right.
Washers and dryers stay at no value, and if you don't have that in there, he's going to take that into consideration.
Right, because he's appraising the property, and this is my great term I learned from real estate school years ago, the chattel.
Right.
Which is the stuff that's not attached to the house.
Right. Like fridges and washers and dryers.
Washers and dryers, TVs, pool
surround
tables.
systems, all kind of pool
right.
tables.
Yes, all that stuff.
Right. Equipment.
So he's going to look in that area, and he's going to try, and then he's also going to try to bracket with one higher than one lower. And people come to me all the time when they're appraising their house. A lot of times on refinances, they'll say, well, that 2 houses up the street, very similar to mine, sold for $350,000. Why was my appraisal lower? Well, you're only looking at those two. Maybe you didn't look at the other 2 or 3 that sold for 280, 290.
Right.
And we
He has
talk
to
about
have
the
more than
art.
one. He has
Yeah,
to be
of course he
more than
does. Usually they're going to have minimum of 3. Usually there's going to be 4.
one. Right.
And right now we talked yesterday with how fast properties are appreciation. These appraisers have a tough job because
Yeah.
they're always looking in the rearview mirror.
They
And
are.
we're writing our contract based on real time.
We're in real time, and in
Right.
real time right now, here in St. Louis, in March of 2025, we're up 8.1% on our median sale price.
So that
where
appraiser's got to deal with that market.
And he has to deal with that market. So now I'm selling homes for 8% more than I sold them last year.
And
how in the world does an appraiser compensate
when the
for
market,
that?
he does, he takes that into account. He's doing his research. He also, when the market moves, he takes into account the declining market.
Yeah, well, that's true too, and
So
that's a problem.
he is also the eyes for the investor of the condition of that property. So he's going to take pictures of the inside, the outside. He's going to picture the comparables. He's going to have pictures of every room. He's also going to note if he sees that the roof looks funny, the wiring doesn't look right, there's peeling paint, there might be water damage. Now, there's a difference between an appraiser and a building inspector. And the appraiser, if he doesn't like the way something appears to him, he's going to call for an inspection on the roof. He's going to call for an electrician's opinion.
Right, and we call those stipulations, right?
Right.
If there are stipulations on the appraisal, if you have an FHA loan, which is a government-backed loan, as opposed to conventional, which is more private, it's not government-backed.
And I will say this, this is a misnomer too that we'll clear up right now. If there's a problem with the appraisal, you're going to have it on a conventional or you're going to have it on an FHA.
Well, FHA though, they're gonna look at peeling paint and cracked
That
glass.
is a big one. That is a big
Conventional
one.
doesn't care. VA's gonna look at peeling paint and cracked glass. Conventional doesn't care about peeling paint and crack. So there are a few extra things on that FHA
But if it's
list to look
a
at.
safety issue, the appraiser is going to make note of it too.
Yeah, well, if it's a safety
Right.
issue, but I'm just saying FHA is like, all consumed with peeling paint and cracked glass. I'm just saying, they are. Right? And so they can order a roof certification, a plumbing certification, electric certification. So that can happen, and we call those stipulations. Now, when do you order this appraisal?
Well, that's a great question because this is a great the person tells me, Glenn, I don't want to order that appraisal until we get done with the building inspection.
Oh, and I'm just like, no. Okay, so in St. Louis contracts, when you agree to a contract, you have a deadline date for your loan commitment, which includes your appraisal.
Right, and I would say this too.
And that is the deadline for the appraisal is loan commitment. If you pass loan commitment and your appraisal's not in, you've just bought that house with a low appraisal, high appraisal, it doesn't matter. Right. So it does have deadlines and contracts. Now,
we want to order it right away.
You do because you're in your contract, the loan commitment date and the building inspection run parallel to each other, right? One's not dependent on the other.
And we don't have time to address any issues.
You don't. And if your lender's sitting
Not
and
your,
waiting,
your direction.
And he's sitting on those hands and waiting for the order of that appraisal, and a lot of them automatically do it without telling you. It's wrong because then if you get to loan commitment date and you're like, well, I couldn't meet my loan commitment date because I didn't work all my inspection things out for 20 days. You get 10 days to ask for stuff and another 10 days to work it out. You can't wait 20 days, but a lot of lenders do. I'm just saying, Glen doesn't. You order that appraisal right away, so that's the win. Now, I know that you don't always just get to just pick up the phone and say, hey, Charlie, I need an appraisal. So
I've been doing this. I've been doing this a long time. It used to where the lender could have a conversation with the appraiser, and
they did.
And they would pressure the appraiser. So to stop that now, the lender and the loan officer, I'm not going to say they have no contact because they're free to contact. We can have a conversation with anybody we want. It's a free country. We cannot put any pressure on that lender for the value. We can't pick the appraiser that we want to use. Now, you can be on Guild's Board of Appraisals and Appraisers and apply to be on that list.
So it's
but
an
when I order
list.
when I order the appraisal
list, though, that you're picking from.
But not that particular appraiser. I can't pick that appraiser, and I can't influence that appraiser as to the value in any way.
Right. So how many people are on your approved list?
Oh boy, that's a great question.
20,
15
50?
to 20. No, not
15
50.
to 20 appraisers. So it's not the same list as a lender may have.
But I can't call that appraiser and say, hey, Steve, I really need 250 on this one.
Right, you can't, whether it's a refinance or a purchase.
Right, and if it comes in a little lower, which we need to talk about, I can't call him up and say, Steve, oh, you did this at 245. I got to have 250. That
Right.
by law, we're not allowed to have that conversation.
Right, but so when he orders it, it's a round robin
Yes.
of whoever's next from the approved list of that lender. So the lender doesn't get to pick, but he does get to have an approved list.
So a couple things, three things can really happen. It can come in right at the value of what the appraiser, what you've agreed on the sales price, which is very common.
Because let's just face it,
Right.
appraisers are only tasked with the mission to say to the lender, it's at least worth what you're trying to
Right.
buy it for. He's not obligated to tell you that it's really worth 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 grand.
And really, that's a
more.
philosophical
He's
question
not
because
obligated.
if you two are willing and you agreed on that price, that's really setting the precedent for what that is worth.
Right.
Now,
'Cause-
let's just say we're a year
Right.
down the road and you want to refinance to a lower rate or pull some cash out. Then we don't have that subjectivity of an agreed upon price. Now we're looking much more what the comparables are.
Yeah, but
So-
even so, they know what you're trying to reach on that
Oh,
to do it. So
well,
let's just face
they're
it,
not supposed to.
the value of any item, we always say,
What
is
somebody's
what
willing.
is someone's willing to pay for it. But in
So,
real
and-
estate world, it's worth what you're trying to pay for it, and only if the appraiser agrees. And we'll talk about what your options are real quick if it is low. But let's
Well,
just
so
face
let's
it.
say what
It's probably
right.
only going to come in at sale price. Like, oh, you're trying to buy it for $250. Oh, miraculously, it came in at $250.
And we're
Right,
going to base that loan amount on the appraised value or the sale price, whichever is lower.
Whichever is lower. That's right.
So there are occasions, and that's where if it did come in higher, okay, so I'm buying it for 200,
Right.
and it happens, and
Right.
it appraises at a 2.25. Well, good. I don't need to put as much money down.
Yeah,
No,
yes,
that
you
doesn't
do.
work like
Yeah,
that.
sale price. Right.
Whichever's lower, the sale
Right.
price.
All right, so let's
Now
just
it's
say
come in
I
a
have,
little bit lower.
It's low. I
You
got
have the
low.
right to appeal.
I have the right to appeal. This is where if you had an appraisal gap in your contract and said, hey, if the appraisal comes in low, $5,000 low, I'll still buy the house. Now
So that's-
you're probably bringing in that $5,000 if it's a little low, right?
Right,
This is
and
where this kicks in.
Most contracts, you tell me, that have the provision that says if the appraisal doesn't come in what I agree to pay for it, most of the time you're going to have the right to renegotiate or get out of that contract.
Well, it's, this is a multiple offer,
Right.
environment still, so a lot of those are getting thrown out. But yes, if you have an appraisal writer onto the contract, it allows you the right to renegotiate with the seller the price. So you're buying a house for $500, it comes in at $475. You can either A, ask the seller to sell it to you for $475.
Exactly.
B, you can negotiate and say, hey, let's meet halfway.
Yes.
And you may bring in a little bit extra to closing and the seller sells it to you. You can have a meeting of the minds.
Right.
Or the seller can just plumb say, no, you still have the right to buy it. You can still buy it.
Or
but
you can walk away, right?
Right,
too,
or you can walk away and the seller can start over and you can start over, which no one's happy to do and
Right.
typically avoid trying to do at that point.
And on an FHA loan, any FHA buyer is going to be subject to that appraiser. You can't go to a different lender and get a different FHA
Those are good for
appraiser.
like 6 months, right?
Right.
So
But-
they're good for 6 months, and so if the next buyer comes up and he has FHA, he's stuck with that appraisal that you just had
Yes,
done.
right.
But you can go conventional, you can go to a VA, you can go to a different kind of
All
loan or all cash, and nobody cares, right? You're
And
gonna
what you're
redo it.
really good at, and I'll give you credit for this, if you are going to waive that appraisal rider on your contract, then you have to be prepared. If it does come in a little bit lower, what are my options? Do I have the cash to bring it in?
Right.
So a lot of times I've sold my house, I'm putting down 200 grand. I don't care if it appraises
Yeah,
a little
so
bit
we
lower.
don't
I
really
want the
care,
house.
right? So if I'm putting down 20% particularly, but let's just say anything more than 10%. But if I'm putting down 20% or more, and it comes in 5% low, right? And so I've got this $500,000 house, and it comes in at $475.
And you're in multiple offers, so you overbid.
Yeah,
And-
my loan amount's actually not going to change. I'm going to get the same loan amount, but the lender now is going to say, hey, you're only putting 15% down. You're not putting 20.
Now you're going to need mortgage
I'm
insurance.
going to need a little. So your payment really isn't going to change all that much.
It really does, especially
No.
you've got low debt to income ratio, great credit.
Right, it's not going to change
It
that
would be
much.
nominal. So
Right now,
don't freak out.
If you're putting 3% down or 5% down,
Then you have to be careful.
You need it. It
Right.
has to appraise.
Yes.
But if you're putting 10% down and it comes in 5% low, I can still get that same loan,
Yep.
right? But now Glen's going to go, hey, you're only putting 5% down, so you have a little bit more PMI than you would have already at 10% down. So even at 10% down, you can absorb a little bit of a loan.
Especially
and a
if it's a
lot of
house you
people
want.
are right now because, let's face it, in St. Louis right now, our inventory was down 10% in February. And so,
So-
we are half the national average. National average is like 3.5 months of inventory. We're 1.6 months of inventory,
Crazy.
and our new listings are low. I mean, it is what it is.
So there's
right now.
one other option, real quick, that you might get what's called an appraisal waiver.
Ooh,
So
appraisal
Fannie and
waiver.
Freddie, if you do a conventional loan,
Yeah.
there is a chance they keep a database. It's going to be based on your score, good credit, debt to income ratio. They've got a database. They've got a good feel of what you're paying for the house. We get a little green check mark, and we don't need an appraisal. And some people will say, well, I kind of want to get one anyway. I highly recommend against it because it could just, one other thing that could cause a problem. If you
Right.
really want an appraisal, then get one after closing. If you
Yeah.
get that waiver,
If you get the waiver,
Yeah,
happy
then-
days. You don't have to pay
yes.
for it. Now, Glenn, if I pay for this appraisal and then I don't close, do I have to pay for it still?
you do.
You gotta
have
pay
to-
for it.
Yeah, you do. It's
So
just
it
like
is
a building
your-
inspection.
Just like a building inspection, I got to pay for it. So that's one thing there. So appraisals. So when the appraiser comes in, does the lender get to review the appraisal? Do
Yes.
they just say, "Oh yeah, that looks
No,
good.
that's a
Thank
great
you.
question.
I don't have anything to say about it."
It's going to get a score. It's scored through the database, and if
It's
it
gonna
gets
get
a
a
low
score.
score instead of a high score,
What's
then
low?
I think it's 1 to 5. So
Oh, okay.
I think 1 or 2 is bad, 5 is better. It might be reversed, but the underwriter can
Might
review.
be reversed.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's one of the two. Yeah, it's subjective. But anyway, the underwriter can review that and will review that appraisal and can ask for additional comparables, can ask for the appraiser to explain some more information, can call for a whole new appraisal. That's rare. It doesn't happen much, but it can happen.
So appraisers are adding. They have this formula that when they see the appreciation in the market, they
deal
do
with it.
add that
Yep.
to a comparable property that was sold 6 months ago. But the lender has to agree that that's appropriate number to add, right? And because this is an art, there's also like, hey, the curb appeal on this one that you're buying is way better than this guy over here. I'm going to give you an extra $5,000. Well,
Majority of the
that's
time,
the art part. There's no standard.
and
for
majority
that.
of the time, it gets worked out between the appraiser and the underwriter, and it's all
Yeah.
fine. It's nothing to stress about. Get it done. Get it early.
Yes,
Find out
or
early.
right
We're going to
away.
run our findings, which is our automated approval, early in the process, and let you know whether we get that waiver or not.
Yep.
And don't wait till the building inspection's done.
That's right.
And cause extra stress for everybody involved.
Right.
And don't panic if it comes in right at the sales price.
Yeah, that's what it's designed to do. That's
Right.
their mission. Well,
All
thanks
right,
for
good
joining
stuff.
us this week. Woo! So we're still planning this wedding. We're going to do some more planning next week because we still got title to talk about and survey to talk about
Awesome.
and building inspections and all kinds of stuff that we're still going through the process. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.